Hello and welcome to this DBIntegrate demonstration. This latest video in our series will show our product log files and how we can handle errors with our data. The first thing that we need to do is load up our DBIntegrate and run our project to determine if we've got any errors in our data. This is the demo mapping project that I've made in the previous demo videos, so please track back and watch those to understand how we got to this point. So firstly I'm just going to run this project. And if we look at this runtime tracker, we can see that we've got 11 records written to our target, but we've also got 12 records that have failed. So what we want to do is look at our log file output to determine maybe why those records have failed, and to just really give us as much information as possible so we can determine the next steps that should be taken. So what I'm going to do is browse to my project log file directory. This is available from the Tools menu, Project Properties, and I can see that my log file directory for this project is in my D drive and then in a folder called DBI_demos. I've got this folder up here now and I've got it sorted on date, so you can see that these were just ran within the last few minutes. And we've got a numerous number of log files here. We've got this demo mapping _proj.dbiproj with the correct timestamp. This is the log file of the project. I then have the demo _mapping with the timestamp.log. This is the mapping job log file. And then I also have a demo _mapping.csv. This is where our failed records get held. If we open up the project log file first, we can see here that it's got quite a plethora of data, all with timestamps, so that we'd be able to ascertain if there were any errors at particular times. This is especially useful for long project runs. And as you can see, it tells us all the different parts of the project. So it's running the OS command here, and then at the next step it's running the SQL command, and it's even telling us what the SQL command it's running is. And then it's telling us when the action has succeeded. So you can see this has taken a matter of milliseconds, it's all within the same second. And then down here we've got about to perform mapping job and mapping job succeeded, and the names of the mapping jobs are also specified. If I scroll down a bit, it's then telling us that the project runtime has finished, and we can ascertain from this that this was all a success. There are no exceptions or errors in this log file, so although we had failures on our records, the actual project did run as expected. This leads us to believe we should now look at our demo mapping log file. So when I first load this, it tells us the version that DBIntegrate is being used and the version projects were created in, and it tells us if we've got truncate tables on. It just tells us quite a lot of information. We then have this section where the schema is validated. So this looks at our source and our target tables and just checks that everything is as expected, really. And then moving down a bit, each record then has its own log file area. This is with full logging switched on, so during a production or development environment you would probably use different levels of logging. So during development you would have a very high level of logging on to help you ascertain problems during setup, but during production you would use a minimal amount of logging to reduce load on your machine and just make the whole process speed up. With full logging it does slow down your mappings, which is to be expected when it's recording a lot more detail. So as you can see for this record here, we're applying some processing. So we're using our DBI to upper function here, and we're outputting you to our SQL_emails data source, and that has all worked fine. And then we're also carrying out a DBI skip target to avoid outputting to our second target table in this instance. If I scroll down and I look for a failed record, it will show in here. At the moment we haven't got any failed, so I'll just scroll down a little bit. And here we have our first failed record, and this number is cumulative, so then when we get to our second failed record it will say 2 failed, 3 failed, and so forth. So this is our exception message. Error. Exception occurred during record operation. Operation was insert, so it's writing the record to our CSV file, which we shall look at shortly. And it's also telling us the column that was in error, so it's our DOB column. And as you can see in this example, it's not outputting anything. So the error was converting the value. In this example, we were trying to put a null field into a SQL datetime data type, and that will not accept nulls. So the exception message that's been returned is that it couldn't pass datetime with pattern YY, YY, MMDD, and so forth. If we look at an example where there was a date, 29th of February 1976, it's saying it couldn't pass it. If I go down to the very bottom of the log file, we get our totals, so we get told how quick the mapping job run, and we get told the total number of source records that have been processed through the mapping job, the number that we have failed, and then the number that have been written to our individual target tables. What I'm going to do now is open up the CSV file. And here is our CSV file. It's been opened up in Excel so that you can understand it a bit more easier. So it basically shows our source data, our ref, full name, surname, date of birth, email and country columns with all the original data. It hasn't at this stage been processed at all by the mapping runtime. It outputs the original information, and then we are told the action that's been performed. With mapping jobs, these will always be insert actions. The comment that the insert caused exception, and the date at which this exception was logged. So we want to solve this datetime error, and re-put this data into our target tables. So if we edit our job, we can solve this issue very easily by applying some datetime processing. I have shown this particular example in a previous demo video, so I will just briefly do it. So I drag the date as my argument, and I set a constant default value to be returned when there is no date or the date is invalid, as we saw in the log files. And I'm just going to drag that up to be my date mapping and save that. If I was to rerun the job and truncate my target table, all the records would be deleted and all the source records would be reprocessed. But in this example, I'm going to re-import my CSV error file, and so that will just process the specific data we're interested in. So if we look at our target table, we've currently got our 11 rows because we've got our 12 failed records. So if we go to tasks and select re-import failed records from CSV, we then have to simply browse and pick up our CSV failure file and press open, and then we would just run this like we would a normal mapping job. So we can select full logging, we can choose to limit the number of rows and so forth. We hit run, we can see that it's saying records processed 12 and records failed 0. And if we view this log, we can see we've got our DBIntegrate processing function working and returning the information to the DOB column under our SQL_emails table, data source. And again, if we scroll to the bottom, it's just letting us know we've got 12 records which have been processed, 12 to our SQL target and 7 to our email target. Obviously this is less because of the processing in which some of the records can be skipped. We finish this and we review our targets. This has now jumped up to 23 rows as we've got our original 11 and our new re-imported 12 records. I'm now going to show you an example log file where the SQL database is down, so some of the target mapping and the SQL commands cannot run. So to do this, I'm just going to stop my SQL server. So I'm just going to load up services and stop the service. So that is now stopped. If I run my project, you will see that the SQL command has gone red. And if we go back to our demo drive and open up the latest log file, you can see we've got a bit of an exception here, and we've been told that the truncate table action has failed. Although this exception looks pretty nasty, it actually can give us quite useful information when debugging errors. So in this example, we've been told a network-related or instance-specific error occurred while establishing a connection to SQL server. If we restart that service, then DBIntegrate will automatically reconnect. And we can run our project again. And it's now all processed. We don't have any records failing when we run through the project runtime. So that is great. This was just a quick introduction to handling log files, errors, and how we can re-import our records. Please join us for the next one in the series coming soon. Please also don't forget to view our other videos on our YouTube channel, TranssoftTube, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to email us. Thank you.